Welcome to Restorate's, one of Restorate's first videos, and I'm going to tackle one of the most frequently asked questions that we get, which is which of the domestic paint strippers work the best. Now we've got a few manufacturers today that we're going to tackle. We've got Polyvine, Enviromos, which should make the DCM Paramos that we sell, the Strip It from Rustin's, Paint Panther from Barratine, which is probably the market favourite, and then the fine wood stripper from Liberon. So the main issues we have with a lot of customers is that people have been using the DCM, which is the very harmful paint stripper that you have to have a license to use on site. If you're an industrial user, you can have it with a declaration, but it needs to be industrial premises with forced extraction. Most people don't have forced extraction or use it on an industrial premises, and therefore today we're going to get to the bottom of which one works the best, how long it takes, and so then you guys as customers can make an informed decision as to which one to go for. So what we're doing here is we're just keying the surface, which will allow the stripper to penetrate further in. I mean, we're only going to do this for 30 seconds, literally as far as much as we've been filming for, and that is going to help it get further in with a few seconds of work. So using something like a brass brush is a bit more flexible than a steel brush. It will do the job very well. So a good tip with paint stripping is get a really cheap brush and cut the bristles down shorter, purely because they're a lot stiffer when they're shorter. And a lot of this depends on you getting it into the paint where it's been opened up by the wire brush to make sure you can get it in there. So it works really well. So that's a good one. So what we're going to do now, we've labelled up the 3 brands up the banister here, and it's all the same, roughly the same thickness of paint, and we're going to apply roughly about the same amount and then leave it for 20 minutes and then see what we can scrape off and what we can't. So we'll start with the Enviromos, which I said before. It's from the manufacturer Paramos, which is the DCM traditional paint stripper that we sell. So you've got the dabbing action in there, really. Don't be shy of getting lots on. This one's quite a lot thinner than the rest, which is interesting. So we'll see how that corresponds later on and what that means. On to Barratine's Paint Panther. A quick note before we sort of start this one, always best to wear, even though these aren't as strong as a traditional paint stripper, they still will cause skin irritation, and if you get it in your eyes, it'll give you a lot of problems. So best to wear eye protection and wear some gloves, latex nitrile, or if you want to go marigold, probably do the same sort of job. If you do get some on your skin, wash up with white spirit or some detergent should do the job with some fairy liquid, etc. Back onto different paint strippers. This is now Paint Panther that we're about to put on. This is probably now the most widely sold paint stripper on the market. I tried before this video to try and find Nitromorse, couldn't find it anywhere, and I think that speaks volumes. However, Paint Panther from Barratine, which is made in Bristol, is everywhere. So we'll see if it is the most effective. Again, same technique. This one's quite a lot thicker than the other one. Not the thickest we've got here today. I think the Liberon's probably the thickest from our pouring out. Viscosity does help, particularly on surfaces like this where it's on a slant, because it helps it stick in one place, which helps it stops drips like that. So it's quite tricky actually to keep this on the slanted surface. We'll try and keep it there. Onto the Liberon fine wood stripper. we can see already within a couple of seconds the environmos has straight away got bubbling up. This is an oil-based gloss paint with lots of layers, so it's been quite effective. I'm pleasantly surprised. The Panther again has been on for probably a minute less, but it's still doing the job pretty well, as we can see it starting there. This is the Libron now. This is the Libron fine wood stripper, definitely the most viscous of all of the strippers we've got here today. Libron specialise in antique restoration, so I'm intrigued to see how this works on paint rather than French polishes or varnishes or waxes, but it should work just as well. They all sort of, if it's a varnish stripper or a paint stripper, you know, it all does the same, follows the same principles. These all have the same component, which is benzyl, and that's replaced the dichloromethane, which is the really harmful stuff in the industrial paint stripper, but it seems to be working just as well. And benzyl is an alcohol, and is relatively non-toxic in comparison. And this one, Rustin's is obviously quite an old-fashioned brand. They've been making good products for a long time. I've never used a paint stripper in an aerosol before, so we'll see how this goes. Might be a little bit messier than we'd like, but let's give it a go. So actually goes on quite well and sticks nicely. Pleasantly surprised at actually how effective that is. Libron, I think, at the moment is the fastest acting. However, actually, that you can see almost in real time, this strip it is bringing the paint almost immediately off. So now onto the Polyvine, which is the first time, this is a new product on the market. Polyvine obviously very famous for their decorator's varnish that you find at a lot of places, which is very good, by the way. Let's say new product for them. This is viscous as well. It's more like a sort of a paste than a gel, which is interesting. Let's see how it goes on. Seems to stick very well. Where this is good, as you can see, it just hasn't moved at all. It's not dripping off, and that really helps on surfaces like this. But lobbing it on, really getting the bristles that we cut short in there, that's going to help. Also, what we did earlier when we roughed up the surface with the brass brush, that's going to help it just get through that initial surface. After 15 minutes, we can see actually they have all worked pretty well. Even actually after a few minutes, these started bubbling quite uniformly. So we'll obviously see in a sec how effective, how many layers of paint they've actually gone through. The Rustin's has bubbled and seems to have gone down a bit more. Maybe that's because it's an aerosol though, so it's probably not the quantity of the stripper on. And the Polyvine probably took the longest to bubble up, but seems to be doing a pretty good job now. I'd say probably Libron was the fastest. Okay, so a couple of ways you can take off the paint stripper and the melted paint. You could either go with the scraper. However, we usually recommend the Restorate that use a scraper for a flat surface. You've got to be really careful about those corners because particularly on an antique, you could very easily gouge. If there's a slight unevenness to the surface, you can very easily gouge a slot in the top, which cause a lot of problems. So grade 4 steel wool off and away. It's really coarse, so you need to wear gloves to use it. It can cut you quite easily. It's almost like cheese wire. So it's going to nicely cut through the surface of this. So we've left these, as I say, for 15 minutes. So let's give it a go, see how they go. So it's gone quite mulchy. This is where there's a bit off there anyway. So it's taken the top layer off, but looks like we'll probably need another application to get through. I mean, it is going down with a bit of elbow grease, but perhaps hasn't deeply penetrated, I'd say, because as I say, this was a lot lighter over here than this middle spot, which is where we're looking at. But yeah, it's not a bad job. It's not too difficult to go on with a second coat. Pretty painless. Onto the Paint Panther straight away, so it's a fair test. See, this is bubbled really nicely. Let's see how deep it's gone. It's pretty effectively taken off the first coat of the paint, but again, it's definitely not going. Let's give it a go with the scraper just to see. So the scraper is sharper, so more aggressive. So that has softened. Let's just try the back to the Enviromos. See, that isn't as soft as the Panther, but still, I mean, either way, you're going to require a second coat with that. So we don't want to gouge the wood or cause ourselves more issues, because we're going to finish this wood with a hard wax oil after. So we want a nice even finish. Onto the Liberon fine wood stripper. This one's probably bubbled the best. Actually, I can see the bubbles actually on the lower levels as well, so I'd say it's possibly the deepest penetrating out of them all. See, actually it's gone down to the wood much easier actually than the rest. Say, out of a lot so far, that's probably the deepest. I mean, if you put some elbow grease into it, I'd say you'd probably be able to go through all the primer layers with that as well. But probably best just to give it a quick recoat. It's not going to take too much time and you'll get a better job out of it. Right, onto the Rustin's aerosol. It's interesting. It's a different kind of reaction on there, but it's very much just the top coat. Yeah. You're probably going to need quite a few applications of that to move the rest of it. Yeah, it hasn't really gone into the underlayers at all. We've got Polyvine. It's bubbled pretty well. Looks like actually the nicest kind of bubbling on the surface, but see how deep it's gone. Really try and get our backs into steel wool. It is gently moving the underlayers. I'd say this one's actually stayed the wettest out of all of them. which actually, as you're using the steel wool, is moving around the undercoats better, but I'd say probably still the Liberon has gone in deepest out of the lot on the first coat. So what we'll do now is, now we've done all of them, we're going to go again, reapply, and we should be able to get all of the paint off. Okay, so this is the second layer. Again, we've left it for 15 minutes. We can see actually separated the men from the boys, as it were. The Enviromode really hasn't touched the undercoat. This is all bits leftovers of the top coat. But we'll see how it reacts when we use the steel wool on it. Paint Panther's done a pretty good job by the looks of it. I reckon that's pretty much gone down to the wood now. Same with the fine wood stripper. I was really impressed with the fine wood stripper. That seems to have pulled most of it off the surface the best. The Rust and Strip It, maybe again because it's an aerosol and it's a thinner layer, but I reckon this does layer of paint at a time. So you'd have to do one for every layer. So great if you're doing something that you want to do, in fine amounts, not take too much off. If you really wants to remove a fine layer, that's probably quite good. Polyvine, that seems to have bubbled up quite a lot of surface, but there's a lot of paint left over after the last layer of strip. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond when we use a steel wool. Right, okay, so. Removing a good amount, try and get as much as we can off, but I reckon we're gonna need another layer of remover on this. For the most part, it has managed to get a decent amount off, but only in the middle. But I suppose, that's where the majority of the locality of the stripper was, so I can say, actually, that has done, if you had a large area, that would probably have the same result. So 2 coats, well done Polyvine. Rust and Strip It. See how easy this comes off now. Oh, look at that, actually. That has where we had to really work at that to get it off. This is almost like rubber now. It's rubberized the paint. That's come off really easily. Well, I say that, actually, down the middle. Okay, so down the middle it's come off very easily. But again, that might be concentration of paint stripper that hasn't run off. So not too bad, but that's as much as I can get off on this one. Okay, onto the Liberon fine wood stripper, and have high hopes for this. See how it goes. Oh yeah, instantly. That's with hardly any pressure at all. And unlike these two where it's sort of only in the middle, this has managed to, everywhere that the brush has touched, it just instantly falls off. So I've hardly had to use any pressure on this at all. That's a very good outcome there. Top marks Liberon, well done. Okay, so is the Barrettine going to be as impressive as the Liberon? Let's see. I reckon it's probably going to be close by the looks of how it's reacted. Again, yeah, really just running this over the surface, hardly applying any pressure. Probably a little less smeary than the Liberon. I would say actually in the places that aren't in the dead center of the rail, it's probably harder to get off than the Liberon. I think the Liberon was the most uniform, but this isn't far behind by any means. Okay, lastly, the Enviromos. So it hasn't bubbled too much, but it might be deceptive. Let's have a go. Yeah, it's not bad. It has definitely loosened it all up very nicely. Yeah, it's not bad at all actually. Probably not quite as easy to get off as the Paint Panther and the Liberon Fine Wood Stripper, but it definitely does work. Like all of them have certainly worked. There's none of these that have been a dud, just some work quicker and work deeper than others. These products you can clean up with white spirit, and where they've left smearing like that, literally just put some on a rag or some kitchen rolls I've got here. And that'll also stop the product from working when it's on there. Probably better use a rag so you don't get this kind of smearing. Nicely richens up the colour of the wood there. Okay, so as we can see, they have all worked one way or another. Some will take longer than others. Pleasantly surprised by Enviromos. I did expect the Paint Panther to be in the top two, but really nicely surprised by how effective that Liberon Fine Wood Stripper is. So I think for the rest of the job that Chris and I have to do this afternoon, we're going to use the Paint Panther and the Fine Wood Stripper. It's a shame that Liberon don't make a larger tub of this, as this 500ml is the largest they do. However, I mean, that was a very small amount. You could probably do most of this banister with, well actually all of this banister with one of those cans. So it does go quite far, but yeah, definitely to the best.